Hello, everyone. We're back. It's a Friday evening, and we're joined again by Kyle. Hello. More Warhammer. The Warhammer, I will say, holy shit, over 700 views. That is the single most viewed video we have ever done on this channel. Apparently, people don't want to know about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. That's fine, understandable. Apparently, what people really want to know about is Warhammer. Or at least that's what the algorithm wants people to know about, or something. I don't really know anymore. But so we're doing more. We'd already intended on doing more Warhammer, but I'm like, well, with a reception like that, why not do it even more? So we're back and we're talking about sort of, I guess you'd call like the cultural / political theory of 40K, or whatever you want to call it, applying 40K to our world. Today we're going to be looking at the Chaos Gods and how they might actually be appearing in our universe. Maybe we don't have to wait to the 41st millennium. Maybe they're already here. So yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. It's another week. There was a balloon or two that was popped, and that was exciting. I guess there was some popping balloons. Elliot, I over your home turf, there was a balloon that got popped. So that's interesting. I don't know if you saw that.
I mean, the top of the world is a great place to fly things.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it's yeah, they popped it, but apparently just like the water was self-frozen because Alaska, so it's like laying on the water. I certainly picked it up. Some sub came up and they got it. Yeah. I don't know. There's weird balloons in the air. I guess it's better than the other year when there were weird clowns in the streets. So I'll take balloons in the air over clowns in the streets any day.
Sounds like a Xenos invasion to me.
Yeah, well, I've been known as a clown in the sheets sometimes too. Anyhow, that's a bad joke. Apologies, dad jokes. All right, we're back. So Chaos Gods. Now, again, I will forward this by saying I am so the noob, and yeah, I know lots of stuff about like the other videos I do. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Middle Ages, but when it comes to 40K, I'm very much brand new to it, so I'm cramming. Watching as many good long format videos as I can. I'll probably put some links into some that I referenced in preparing for this video, but I completely genuflect to the two gentlemen and scholars here who know far more about this than I do. So I'll pass it to one of you guys. We'll just start maybe giving an overview of the Chaos Gods in the 40K universe, just for people who are maybe like me, who are complete noobs. Catch people up to speed. So
yeah, and I'm happy to take the overall.
You do it.
Overall
you do
summary. Yep. We'll do it. So, all right. So if you watched the episode last time, I'm going to assume you didn't. Sorry, everybody who watched, which is everybody apparently.
All 700.
Yeah, all like literally 10 times more viewers than any other video. There you go.
Sorry, yeah.
Ridiculous. All y'all are ridiculous. I'll just have you say it. But anyway, regardless. So remember the warp. The warp is this kind of cosmic mental space hellscape that is semi-real, semi-not real. It's called the Immaterium. By the Warhammer 40K faction called the Imperium of Man. So that's kind of the human faction through which we kind of view the rest of the lore, right? Like some of us, like myself, prefer to follow the Necrons, but we don't know much about them because the freaking Imperium doesn't really know a bunch about them. So fair enough. But
so with the end. So what? Sorry, that came out. Apologies. What I meant to say is I respect your Necron followers here. Yes.
Sounds like heresy.
I have to work on my my sensitivity training. Apologies. Yeah. Too long in the Inquisition. It's hard to reprogram.
All gene stealers are welcome here, right?
That's amazing. In this house, all gene stealers are welcome. Yes.
So the warp is home to a lot of different funky entities, but the most famous of which are the Chaos Gods. The Chaos Gods are they end up being created out of the deep psychic and emotional needs, desires, outpourings of sentient living beings, right? Now Necrons kind of don't count, and Tyranids don't count. They both are kind of phased out of it, but everybody else in some way or another contributes to the strength of the chaos gods, right? So if you're familiar with like Greek, Roman, Norse, other traditions too, but you know, there's certain acts that you just do in your daily life that will strengthen certain gods, right? And that's definitely how the chaos gods work, right? So there's 4 of them. They're big baddies. There's Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, right? Khorne is the god of war, right?
He's also
and
the
murder.
god of incredibly low tuned down guitars and just amazing.
Okay. He's the
rap
god
metal,
of
new
early
metal.
2000s
He's the god of
high
new metal.
schoolers.
He's the god of new metal. What we're trying to say is he's a freak on a leash. Okay.
He is indeed metal, that's for
Yes.
sure. You know, if you've heard "Blood for the Blood God, Skulls for the Skull's Throne," that's Khorne's literal motto for people. So there you go. Tzeentch is the changer of ways. He is a tricky dude. You know, he's a schemer. He is a god of magic and change, master of the time stream, and he is, you know, the great conspirator for the architect of fate, whatever the heck that means. Nurgle is the god of decay. You know, what is it? So they say Nurgle loves everybody equally, right? He loves well, not equally, but he loves everybody, right?
Well, not
Because,
today, Nurgle. Not today.
Not today. All right. He's the lord of entropy and fecundity, right? Joyous bringer of plague and physical corruption. He is the cycle of purification, rebirth, and morbidity. And then Slaanesh is the Dark Prince, the chaos god that was created by the Eldari, who got so sexually and otherwise deviant and just generally degenerate that they brought a chaos god into existence that then proceeded to wreck their faces, essentially.
If anyone has seen the outstanding 1986, I believe, horror film From Beyond, Stuart Gordon directing, I think of sort of Slaanesh as being from that movie. If you haven't seen From Beyond, that kind of weird, perverse, bright colors, just slime, sex stuff popping out everywhere, doing things, changing people, eating people, prolonging horrific things, and yeah, that's how I think about Slaanesh. But yeah.
Literally in the book, it says the Dark Prince is all things decadent and debased. So Slaanesh is literally cringe.
Yeah, the exact opposite of based.
Exactly. Yeah. So those are the kind of, like, you know, they got the 4 chaos gods. You know, each. So in principle, since the chaos gods are fed and nourished by all of these sort of negative traits, if in theory the entire universe became virtuous, then the chaos gods would cease to be. But obviously things like murder and death in the 40k universe is just not going to stop. Like, the orcs are designed for war, right? So they're always going to be feeding Khorne. Obviously everything dies, right? So you can't really stop Nurgle. Tzeentch being the god of change, well, humans are all about change and things change all the time. And then Slaanesh is the one weird one that was kind of popped out of existence, but now that she's there, he ain't trying to leave, right? And so the chaos gods all deal with this thing called the Great Game, where they're trying to like one up each other all the time.
Excuse me, Elliot, just a point of privilege.
Yep.
It's Slaanesh and Slaanesh's self, but it's fine. I just wanted to point that out.
Exactly, decadence extraordinaire.
Yes.
So that's kind of the and the other kind of thing I'll say as an intro point is that chaos in the 40k universe, you know, you can go serve chaos directly, right? It's not that it's just corrupting you from the shadows, right? It's not that they're sneaky. You can go up to Khorne and say, hey, can you give me cool powers and I'll kill stuff for you? And he's like, sure, I'll do that. You know, so you can actually pledge yourself to one of the chaos gods directly, which is usually a very bad idea. But I mean, you can, you know, people choose it. And so there's a whole faction, a sort of like wing of the Imperium that ended up worshiping chaos or generally teaming up with them. And so there's different subfactions per chaos god of the Imperium. And this is like one of the big problems for the Imperium of Man, is that even more fundamental as an existential threat than the Xenos threat is the chaos threat, right? Because it's sort of your own coming and trying to corrupt you with your own stuff, essentially. So that's the general layout of chaos in the 40K universe.
Yeah,
and just to follow up, it's like literal corruption, right? So like if you join and pledge yourself to like Khorne, like one of the like big guys in the Imperium, Angron, like he's mutated into this like beast, right? So it's like actual physical corruption.
Yeah, quite literal.
We're not talking about just your soul here. Like your body's going to follow suit.
Yeah, and they'll be corrupted in the ways that are in line with the general principles of that god, right? So Nurgle is going to give you a real like decrepit body that you will not notice the gaping wounds in, which makes you a really great fighter, right? Yeah. And then you'll be a plague bearer too. Khorne
who wants a hug?
Khorne will give you spikes or something, and Tzeentch is just gonna straight fuck with you, right? I wouldn't recommend that guy. That guy is nuts. And then Slaanesh, who knows? So there you go.
Slaanesh will turn you into a Cenobite, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Cenobites. Yeah.
And to the point of pain too, though, it's sort of like that always dancing on the line between pleasure and pain. So yeah, anyway, those are the chaos gods. They're kind of fun. Again, they reside in the warp. They don't live directly in the universe. They kind of can't, and so they have to influence the universe through indirect means.
Yeah, no, it's that was a really well done summary. Yeah. Cal, did you have other stuff you wanted to add, or?
No, I thought Elliot did a great job.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. I think I'll just opine here briefly, if I may. It is interesting to me that I have, again, being brand new to the world of 40K, so what do I know? But compared to other sci-fi fantasy universes, right? You have to have the bad, right? And in a world that's as bad and generally as bad as 40K, the bad is incredibly bad, of course. So everything's turned up to 11. But it is interesting that like these are not. I when I was like, oh, they have like chaos gods. Like, okay, so I'm thinking like Lovecraft, right? That's where my brain goes, being a non-40K person. But obviously there's some Lovecraftian influence here, for sure. But it is interesting that like these are not pre-existing. Well, I mean, they are pre-existing at the moment in time when you sort of enter the game, right? Like when the lore of the game. But it's interesting to me that these gods are they're created out of like what mortals do.
They're not like titans, and they're not primordial beings.
Right, they're not primordial. They're not like, it's a decidedly different take on. I would maybe I think I can use this term this way. It's a decidedly postmodern sense of demon, and it's not like some creation deity makes, or like it's not like there's some pre-existing bad god like in a dualist universe, and it's not like there's some good god that then makes something that goes bad, right? Sort of a more Judeo-Christian, really more Christian. That's really more of a Christian idea. It's like, oh no, it's just people are shit, or any mortals are shit and awful, and that's where the bad stuff comes from. And they're so bad that they literally manifest a deity of like a demon, basically. It's a very interesting thing, and I'm certain there are other fantasy universes out there that have that, but I had not experienced something quite so wonderfully postmodern before. And I was like, oh, that's like a different view of a demon. I kind of,
Sorry to interrupt. As somebody who has like a medieval studies background, I don't, but I want to ask you, Colin, like the 1990s movie Merlin with Sam Neill, which is a great film. Spoilers upcoming. If you haven't seen it. Yeah. Queen Maeve's power comes from that. Like Merlin is trapped in this very long battle with her. And the way that he finally defeats her is he gets everybody to turn his back on her. And once she loses everybody's recognition, she becomes powerless. And like she has no more magic, right? Is that something that exists in medieval?
Well, it's a complex question. I'll give a skirting over many possible detours. I'll give a very general answer to that. So the idea, okay, in the Middle Ages in Europe, when people are converting to Christianity, which is a slow process, like it takes a long time to really convert an entire culture to Christian, to any religion, right? Whether that's you know you know Buddhism or Islam or Christianity or whatever, right? Whatever religion that is. Conversion takes a long process. So there's a lot of crossover period, right? Where you have like, I mean, and to speak a little bit more to the area that I know best. So like in the Viking Age, right? In Scandinavia or post-Viking Age Scandinavia, you still have like you'd have little hamlets, isolated hamlets where people would still believe in, they would worship one of the or multiple of the older gods. So like Thor or Odin or Freyr or something like that. It's hard to know exactly how this really happened because so many of the records are clearly biased towards the Christians because they're written down by Christians, which is fine, but that's what it is. There's this sense that so for example, in Icelandic sagas, which should not be taken literally, but they're legendary stories, that they're somewhat indicative of the time period in which they were written. You have a few of them. It's actually kind of a reoccurring trope where like Odin shows up, right? Like everyone's supposedly Christian, and Odin shows up as a strange wanderer. And if you know anything about Odin, Odin wanders around and is like the mysterious wanderer. That's one of Odin's avatars or guises, if you will. So Odin would like go into, knocks on the door and he's like, "Oh, I'm a guest." And of course, there's a law of hospitality. You're required to show, you can't just leave guests out to die in the cold. And so you let him in, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, so you're Christian?" They're like, "Oh, yes, we are all Christian in this, this king's court or this lord's court. We all are Christian." And there's like usually a priest there. Again, these are shouldn't be viewed as historical stories, but they're sort of indicative of this process of conversion. And so then Odin does something like, he's like, "Oh, well, are you really certain that Jesus was born through immaculate conception?" Right? So like Odin takes on almost a devil character figure where he's trying to like pervert the Christians. And then what usually happens in these stories is the priest, at least in one of them, the priest picks up his parochial staff basically and like whacks Odin on the head or something crazy, and Odin like flees. And that's like, and it moves on to the rest part of the story, as sagas do. There's no transitions. It's just like, and then the next day. So
back when priests were based.
Yeah, no, like priests are, so in these stories, which are all again legendary mythical stories, but like the priests are literally whacking the pagan god on the head. So then as a medievalist, right, it's a great story. It's super funny. You can tell where Gaiman got a lot of his inspiration for American Gods from. But as a medievalist, you're like, okay, well, what does this story tell us about like how pagan gods were viewed, right, in the Christian period in Europe? And it's that largely that they didn't necessarily go away. It's that they just became seen as demons, right? So they were just saying, well, like, these things are demonic. But it was never, and obviously the Christians in the Middle Ages, didn't want people worshiping pagan gods, obviously, and they were seen largely as demonic. And if you are a Christian, particularly a medieval Christian, right, you definitely don't want people worshiping Satan. That's bad. And also the thing too is that, I should say, it's hard after that Grammys performance. People didn't really worship Satan. They worshiped individual devils. That's how it was seen in the Christians' imagination. And so you didn't want people worshiping devils because that's really bad. And but it wasn't like that if you just stopped believing them, they would go away, right? There was still this ever-present threat of demonic influence in medieval Christian, at least in the medieval Christian imagination, right? Okay. There was this threat of like, oh, well, like, maybe the demon appears as Odin, right? As they tends to do in these stories, but he could appear as something else, right? And in another, it's like whatever you're most susceptible to, wherever you're the weakest, that's where the demons go for. So I've been thinking about this, so thank you for asking that very good question. In some ways, I can tell like that there's been the 40K creators, the entire 40 years plus of however many thousands of people have created the lore, right? Because it's this interesting kind of collaborative effort, as I understand it. They're clearly drawing inspiration from this like intensely like paranoid, right, that there's evil everywhere kind of. I mean, obviously there's an inquisition in the world of 40K. But the difference is that in the Middle Ages in Europe, the demons were seen as independent spiritual entities, and obviously you shouldn't worship them, but it's not like if you worship them they go away. Whereas as Elliot has said, if everyone in the world of 40K was to all of a sudden become nice, they would go away. The problem is no one's gonna be nice. So I
And of
guess,
course, the Chaos Gods have an interest in not going
Right,
away, so
right.
they're gonna stoke some stuff, right? Like,
right. So I guess that the medieval Christian view could be summarized something as evil is pre-existing, something like that. Like evil was already there,
I
and
see.
it will
Yeah, that's
it'll try to
fundamentally
fuck with,
different.
it'll try to trick you, it'll try to fuck with you to do bad things. But it's a kind of an it's not right. So evil was never seen as independent of God's judgment and God's control ultimately, on like an eschatological level. Apologies, I'm probably taking the episode a little bit too academic, but you did ask. But yeah, so like obviously, like, yeah, it's this is 40K, like I said, is way more pomo, it's way more postmodern. It's like evil wasn't necessarily pre-existing as a separate intelligence. It's like we made it intelligent, and we
and it's
made it outside of ourselves somehow. We projected it into the warp, right? So
well, it's simultaneously postmodern and like very pre-modern.
very
Like
pre-modern. It's
almost
both things at the same time. Yeah. Elliot, you there?
right,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's not. Oh, yeah, I'm still
Go ahead.
there. And sorry. So yeah, it's not that there, because in the Christian sense, right, there is sort of God administering everything, you know, in contradistinction to Satan, who he kind of allows to run amok in some ways, right? Like
Right.
God could end the game at any moment, right? Like he's the owner of the casino, right? Like, so, you know, Satan is allowed to do some stuff for, you know, deep reasons or whatever, but basically, like in the 40K, there are essentially no entities more powerful than the Chaos Gods, although some might argue that the Emperor of Mankind might be on par with some of them in some ways. So there's nobody coming to save you in the 40K
There's nobody coming to
universe. But
save
at
you.
the same time, it's not like the four Chaos Demons, they're actually less evil than postmodernists, in my opinion, right? Like, because they don't want to end the universe or clear existence out of existence, right? They just want to keep doing their thing, right?
Which is, what you're saying is they're less evil than Zizek.
You know, I would say actually Zizek is somewhere, like he's actually one of the less evil.
I actually kind of like Zizek against my better.
Yeah, he's one of the least evil communists I'm aware of.
Yeah,
but
pretty
anyway.
much. He can run. We'll let him run the train system or something like that. I'm certain it will be glorious and inequitable. Yeah.
There's lots of spouting off and expletives with trains. Yep.
Yeah. Fast food.
It's always honking.
Pizza stains and trains. Yeah. No, but yeah, it's interesting too, compared even again. So like, again, as a complete noob, you know, the term Chaos Gods gets me thinking about Lovecraft, right? Or Lovecraft inspired things, which again, there's clearly a lot of influence here. But even in Lovecraft, right, the gods, okay, they're technically like alien beings beyond our understanding, but even they are pre-existing, right? Like it's and they influence humans to do bad things and they drive us crazy. But we don't like make Cthulhu, right? Like in Lovecraft's world, like Cthulhu is there and you find out about Cthulhu and you're like, I can't handle it anymore. And then Cultist like stabs you in the back or something like that. And then the story ends. As it always did in some like weird first person. I am now falling down the stairs. Lovecraft is a great creator. I don't know about his writing skills all the time, but I still love him. But again, this is very even Lovecraft, who was sort of maybe approaching the postmodern, but still very much in a modern period, still had a pre-existing evil right out there. And so and you know, many people have written about this, far more intelligent and well-read than I am, about how, like, you know, as much as Lovecraft resisted the Christian worldview, he still was very like, his demonology of the various elder gods is still very, very Christian in many respects. Whereas this is really more of a, like, yes, there's this medieval paranoia for sure, but it's kind of interesting. They're essentially all egregores or tulpas. And that is cool. I'm certain there's many great sci-fi fantasy universes out there exploring this idea. I'm just largely ignorant of them, but the only other time I had really seen a universe use that as like a mechanism for the evil in this universe, for how evil works, was actually Twin Peaks. If anyone's seen Twin Peaks, one of the greatest shows ever made, where tulpas are a whole thing in Twin Peaks, right? You have good Cooper and bad Cooper, right? So you have these like evil twin tulpas running around taking your place. But even then, that's like a, you know, you might get subsumed by your evil twin. It's not like everyone's awful and then makes a demon. So
Well, and
anyway,
it's not totally obvious. Like, I mean, from an objective perspective, that the chaos gods are evil proper, right?
okay.
Because
Well, they're bad for humans. How about that?
but this is the kind of question, though, isn't it? Like, because you know, if you're a psyker, right, you might actually have a better time signing up with Zinch, joining the Thousand Sons, rather than being randomly sacrificed to the Emperor of Mankind's throne, right? Like, literally, you know, the humans do be doing a lot of sacrifices. They
This is
do be
true.
stacking a lot of skulls for
This is
the
true.
Golden Throne. And so it's sort of like, and this is the beauty of 40K. It's like, you know, we are told from the Imperium's perspective that like chaos is evil. And then you look at the Imperium and you're like, but how are you different than those guys,
Yeah.
though? Like,
Yeah, I actually think that the Imperium needs chaos. I don't know if that counts as a hot take, but
That's not, well, that no, explore that take.
lay it on me. Lay
Yeah,
it on me.
Yeah.
so obviously, as we've discussed, chaos needs the Imperium, right? They need to, it's like the spirit bomb, right? They need to power up. But the whole thing about the Imperium is that it's rotting away because it's not changing, right? Like the Emperor of Mankind wanted to introduce this golden age, but then he failed during the Horus Heresy, and everything just sort of got fossilized, and you have this cult around the Emperor that's become this religion that the Inquisitors are enforcing, right? And because you don't have the possibility of change and progress from coming from within the Imperium, it's just going to continue to rot. And in the Emperor's case, like literally, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, being a grad student, I was thinking about like social science and theories of like how social change happens. And it happens through social movements, like mobilizing mass groups of people to start thinking about different possibilities. And you need like change actors, and you also need like important new ideas. And what better ideas to appeal to than like the most fundamental archetypal ideas that motivate like material existence, like these ideas that the Imperium just kind of like doesn't want you to think about, right? At least not to excess. And so the chaos gods represent this ideology that helps mobilize like literally like these chaos cults, right? And they're trying to produce like these social movements that are going to challenge the Imperium. And that breaks the stasis because the Imperium has to react in some way. And it has to react in some way and understand that this change is coming from humans. It's not like an external threat like the Tyranids. It's, well, humans are pushing for this change. And, you know, this is a cult that has an in-group, out-group distinction, right? Like, you know, we're here to represent Khorne. We're not part of the Imperium, right? And I think there's like something to be said about like the chaos gods as sort of this parable of progress and the possibility of change that the Imperium just can't deliver.
No, it's
so that's why I
interesting
think the
because
Imperium needs chaos.
No, absolutely. That's an interesting take. And actually there's a sub bit of that I really love, which is that essentially the Emperor of Mankind in one sense represents human utopian desire, and particularly modern progressive utopian desire. And I say that specifically because he is explicitly atheist himself, right? And he is explicitly scientific materialist and
New atheist.
all these things, right? New atheist type of thing. But on top of that, he wanted to usher in an era of utopia, and then the chaos gods kind of screwed him up. But the question is, like, would his era of utopia just ushered in a new golden age of humanity where we get totally wrecked by AI again? Or is this sort of chaos versus empire kind of the best that humans can do? And like you say, chaos being external sort of saves us from the chaos then in being internalized, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Yeah, it almost is like a that's almost like a dualist interpretation of the 40K universe, that you have like, you have to have the, I mean, in air quotes, good, right, emperor, which is obviously not good, but like the less shitty god who's also the emperor, right, and then the objectively worse chaos gods in eternal conflict to sort of balance the sort of the I don't know, karmic scales of the universe or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't think it's
kinda
necessarily good or bad. It's
Yeah,
like Hegel, right? Like you have thesis and antithesis, and then they're both needed to produce
you
the
watch
next
your mouth around here. We are
phase.
Hegel disrespecters here. That's fine if you like Hegel,
But it is a good point because there is a
No, it's
synthesis, right?
yeah,
And they do be trying to synthesize with
there's
each
some
other. That's for sure.
synthesizing for sure happening here. Yes,
Through the barrel of a gun, synthesis
Yes,
through the
pretty
barrel of a gun. I
much.
think Mao said that.
It's a kind of synthesis, you know.
But no, like that's really interesting. So, and I think that yeah, chaos does not necessarily need the Imperium specifically, although I think the Imperium is probably one of the better pawns of chaos.
Well, humans, it seems like humans are more susceptible.
They're more susceptible to like everybody, right? So
Yeah.
so obviously Khorne has a special place in his heart for orcs, and Slaanesh literally was birthed by the Eldari, but humans can go any which way. So I think there is something to be said about the humans being the most flexible, probably most, since the chaos gods are playing a cosmic game with each other, right? Humans are the best game to play, right?
Yeah, definitely.
To Kyle's point.
Yeah, no, it is an interesting point. I didn't think about it quite that way, but yeah, it's like yeah, there's a give and a take. There's a push pull, and they both need each other. Yeah, although that's just, I guess that's a super depressing thought, but it's 40K and everything's depressing and wonderful at the same time because it's just so dark. Yeah, you can really tell that you can tell that I'm a Tolkien person discovering 40K. I'm like, oh, this is different than I had expected. Okay, that's fine. That's okay, but it's just
Just think of it like they're all Melkor.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it's just Melkor A versus Melkor B. Yeah,
Right.
the
Hashtag, what if
Pepsi-Cola
Melkor won?
versus the Coca-Cola Melkor.
Yeah, what if Melkor won?
Yeah.
That's right, Elliot.
Yeah. So do we want to start? Well, I mean, I think we had talked about this, at least in the chat, as in prep for this. We might have teased this last Warhammer episode. I can't remember. When I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think I have some ideas for, okay, so Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, they exist, we hope, only in the world of 40K. But since they are egregores and tulpas, maybe they exist here. Maybe they manifest themselves in our universe. I have some ideas for where they might be popping up. I wrote some notes. I don't know if you guys have thought about this at all. Elliot, do you have? I know we started a little bit on this, but do you want to start with Khorne? Just do the canonical.
Oh yeah,
He was the first one. Like, where do you see?
Sure.
Where is Khorne? Can you see? Give me an example of Khorne in our world.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Khorne is really interesting. I'm trying to find the non-obvious hot takes, right? Because there's the really obvious ones are every Warhawk, right?
Yeah, right.
Here's the slightly hotter take.
John Bolton?
John Bolton, right?
John Bolton's
but
a disciple of Khorne. Yeah, for sure.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton's a disciple
of Khorne, right?
Khorne
We need to. We need to say
that's a very Khorne thing to say. Yeah.
Right. And it's like it's a more subtle version because it's like
Mission
we need to spread.
Yeah.
Right. We need to spread. So every president.
We need to spread democracy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single Warhawk.
You guys went a lot more political. I was just gonna say like the freeway on rush hour.
The freeway rush hour. Yeah. Well,
that's a good point.
This makes me think of Good Omens, to bring it back to Gaiman, right?
Yeah.
Like, right? The what part of it is of the M1 or whatever it is? What part of the particular? I forget the name of the particular freeway in London. Somebody from England will correct me. Fred will correct me. Where it's like the reason it's so awful is because it's literally in a demonic sigil. That's how they built the road, and so when people drive through it, they're essentially fueling the fury.
They're praying to Satan. Yeah,
exactly, and they hate each other behind the wheel. Good. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah,
Rush Hour is a perfect example, though.
Yeah. Yeah, other I don't know, other corn examples of corn. I don't know. Trying to think. We can move on. Yeah, I was just gonna say the obvious low-hanging fruit is the entire military industrial complex, right? Like,
Well, right.
yeah, that's just it's a little too on the nose, but I don't know. It's fine. It's 40K. We don't have to be
What
subtle.
would like a football stadium? Would that be
Okay, this is interesting.
Maybe,
would that be corn?
except maybe
Because I see like things
a
like the World
gladiatorial
Cup.
arena for sure, but
Yeah, sure. But like
stadium-
something like the World Cup seems to me to challenge, if not challenge, channel like violent tendencies into non-violent.
but is that
sport.
corn though? I think corn.
Right.
would
That's what I'm
violent-
wondering,
I
right?
think corn would
Because
want
football is like super violent, a sport. It's super violent.
Which one?
So
Football, American
so
football.
yeah,
Not compared to
I
some.
think sports could be corn.
Maybe.
I think I'm gonna also go with the amount of drinking involved. Maybe Slanesh might have a little bit of fun there too, right? Like there is the kiss cam.
Mhm.
Sports feels
I'm really stretching there.
Sports feels too constructive for corn. I feel like
It's constructive.
It's too constructive. It's not wanton violence. Like it's like there's rules.
You know, it could be Zeech then, because Zeech is kind of circular. Like he really enjoys just kind of stirring things around, and there is literally no resolution in sports. I mean, sure,
That's
there's
true.
a championship, but like the whole premise is to reorder things. Like, essentially, anything that has an
actually true.
anti-hierarchical thing is Zeech. So sports might be Zeech.
So be
I
on the
have a
lookout.
Cornian sport.
Be on the
I have
lookout.
a Cornian sport.
Okay, but be on the lookout during the Super Bowl because the halftime show. Be looking for the Zinch ritual elements in there because we know. So we'll be on the lookout for
I like Rihanna.
it. Okay, you have an idea.
This Dana White power slap bullshit.
Yes, the power slap. Yes, yeah.
That is definitely
That's
corn.
definitely
Like,
corn.
Because man, Elliot, that's not circular at all. That's just like
Nope.
you get slapped and then you have to go home because your brain is just mush.
Man, I've seen that, and I'm like, but that is degeneracy, man. Like that is Slaneshi as fuck as well.
Oh,
right?
that's true.
Like,
Yeah, because it's like fueling all this betting, right? Like,
well, the betting, and
That's
it's just like, why would you sign up for that, right? Like you're like,
Oh, I
I
have
need
no
to
idea.
experience like fucking.
and they get
like
paid like just a couple $1,000s.
that's ridiculous. They're recreationally getting slapped. That doesn't even cover your medical bills.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's the tagline for the show right there. You're getting recreationally slapped, and it doesn't even pay your medical bills.
They you know what? Maybe the water's turning us gay. We're slapping each other all over the place.
I think we're turning the frogs gay, and the frogs are turning us gay. I think it's a reciprocal thing. So I don't know.
We have the chaos frog gods.
We're
turning us
chaos
gay.
frog god. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on because again, there's three more. Zinch, obviously, I have some ideas, but I'll try to defer to the co-hosts.
I actually have no idea. That's
I
the one
got
I
some
can't think of any.
What is
Zinch-
blue and fuels rage and is always changing?
Yeah, but Democrats, obviously. No,
Well, yeah, but
no,
The
no.
bird side, Twitter is clear.
Oh, the bird. Yeah, Zinch.
Twitter.
Right. We had talked.
Twitter
about
is
this.
even
Zinch
blue.
is Twitter.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that.
But also every occultist is Zinch as well, because Zinch is the god of magic, right? So he's definitely hermetic, because hermeticism is all about transmutation and
Yep.
change and everything. So if you're a hermeticist like me, then you're definitely a Zinch follower in 40K.
You have no choice. well, Elliot, when you figure out how to turn, lead to gold, you let me know. Okay, I'm still waiting. Still waiting.
Where's your god now? You see this? You look at you being scientifically immaterialism, right? Like it's fantastic.
That's a different episode, sir. Well, let's not start that. Okay, yeah, I don't think you're wrong. Yeah, I think would say all of social media, right? Because I mean, the way I view it is all of these to kind of plug into other themes we've explored over the past few months on the channel. So sorry, Kyle, to kind of thrust you in here a little bit more into the turbulent waters of stuff that maybe.
I'm down.
Yeah, I know you're busy doing
Zinch, bro. It's turbulent.
more important stuff, but yeah, like these are all entropic entities, right? Right. They all break things down. I mean, obviously Nurgle specifically, right? Like clearly, but they all revel in changing states, right? Like all of them. well, I guess maybe you can make an argument that Slaanesh is a prolonging state, so maybe Slaanesh is slightly different, but it's still this perversion twisting, ad infinitum kind of thing, which is very much entropic in, again, our very narrow and the way we would define it here. And so I think they're all created by and sort of stand-ins for degeneracy. And,
Right.
Tzeentch is sort of the eternal changer. I mean, I think of him as like, the worst version of Coyote from Trickster stories, right? Ever, right?
Yes.
Like eternal.
A totally non-constructive version of Coyote or Raven, right?
Or Raven to pick a Pacific Northwest, or Snake
Nancy.
at Near East. Yeah, Snake, right? The changey one, the one that's always moving around and doing different things. I mean, that's social media. It doesn't have to just be Twitter, although Twitter's blue, so it works. I think that was you who first said that, Elliot. You blew my mind. I'm like, holy crap, I have Tzeentch on my phone.
Exactly. Well, I'm trying to get you to realize your heretical ways and repent.
Says the hermeticist. Okay, yeah. No, yeah, all of social media, Twitter, any, I guess I would argue too, by extension, any sort of blind push for change, or push for change for change.
So basically progressives.
I mean, essentially, yeah, like a blind thrust into the future because new must be better, or at least it's new,
Or we just need new. That's the thing.
So
it's like
marketing
firms.
Marketing firms, lobbyists,
change agents.
Advertising,
and he's all about rebalancing for no reason. So diversity and inclusion, absolutely.
So
Everything.
actually,
Federal
social media
Reserve,
like relying on ads.
rebalancing. What?
No.
Cal?
Well, social media relies on ads, right? Like it's a vehicle to sell you shit for the purpose of selling you shit.
Yeah, the things you don't even want, right? We create the need, we create the perceived need for things that you don't even. Yeah. So that was one. Any other places? I mean, so we could find more, but and maybe
I mean, anything that involves major change. So honestly, even like science. One of the things that is said.
Peer review and publish.
Peer review.
Yeah, peer review is definitely Tzeentch as fuck. I mean, because for two reasons. Firstly, it's improvement, which is change, and secondly, science does tend to spin in helical patterns, right? Which isn't necessarily a bug, but that's the whole point, is that it's Tzeentchy, right? Like,
I love. Sorry, as a part-time linguist, Elliot, I love that you've turned all these into adjectives. I think that's me. Corny already existed, right? Tzeentchy. Yeah, Slaaneshi you already said, and then Nurgle, it works. So yeah, those are all.
I definitely have contempt for linguistic rules for sure. Which means that linguists so grammarians hate me, but linguists love me. They're like, oh my god,
Well, it's also very Tzeentchy of you. You're always changing. Can never pin you down.
Hermetic.
Lord. All right. Yeah. Nurgle. So where does Nurgle show up? Because I have some ideas, but I'm more interested in yours. I'll share mine later. Where does Nurgle show up? I can think of a lot though. So.
Oh, you first, Cal.
Yeah, Cal, go first.
I mean, when you say Nurgle, I just think of like places I've traveled in Southeast Asia that have open sewers.
Okay, open sewers.
Which like sometimes you got to be real careful because they're not marked, and like you make a step.
Yeah,
you're gonna have some fun.
I've had that. I've never actually managed to step in one, thank God, but yeah, both in Vietnam and the Philippines, I've had the almost step, or the almost fallen, or the few too many beers almost step into, and you're wearing flip-flops and you do not want to step into that.
Oh man,
yeah. Just so open sewers, that's one for sure.
Not to get real literal.
That's not literal, but hey, I mean, yeah, poop, it comes out of your body hopefully at least once a day.
It's visceral though. It's visceral.
It's real. Everyone poops, as the book says. Maybe that book was written by Nurgle. Okay. Sorry, going a little Alex Jones today. Yeah.
Obesity. Obesity is hella Nurgle.
Industrialized food production for sure.
Yep.
So fucking Monsanto. Monsanto is fucking Nurgle. And you should treat Monsanto like Nurgle, by the way. They're gonna those Monsanto agents,
like pharmaceutical companies.
I was gonna say industrialized. Well, it's food medicine, sort of all that stuff, right? Where
ironically, pharmaceutical companies, right?
Yeah, well,
so it's ironic, Nurgle.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like rain on your wedding day. It's that kind of a Nurgle. It's Nurgle. It's interesting because Nurgle doesn't really solve, like, so people. My understanding is just from the deep dive I'm doing, trying to catch up on the lore, that so people are suffering from disease will maybe like pledge themselves to Nurgle, thinking that he's going to help them, but all he does is make them feel better about being diseased and then make them more diseased. Well, that is the industrialized health system, particularly in America, right? Where like,
so that
we won't
video
cure
you
the
sent
illness.
me,
We won't cure the illness. We'll just let you live with it for longer, but you're going to be completely dependent upon our stuff, and you're probably just going to get more unhealthy along the way, right? Like,
well, you sent me this like TikTok or whatever that was a safe place for people who were just eating.
oh yeah,
and
the
they're
safe
like
place
just
for eating yourself to death. Yeah, those things.
What?
Oh, the fat pride people who are like, it's fine for me to eat this way, and they're like fucking 500 pounds. And as somebody who is myself overweight, I can't help but view people like that with contempt, because obviously they're suffering from a complete mental whammy that Nurgle is. They've been whammied by Nurgle, right? They've been told that it's okay to be this way, that medical science will allow them to continue to live, and everyone else will pay for their medical stuff because they have a right to it or something like that. So obviously these people are in many ways victims, and I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, it's like, as somebody who obesity runs in my family, I'm trying to lose weight. I am losing weight. It's very difficult, and it's very difficult to do it in a society and a culture that the worst food is the cheapest food. So there's just like, that's a problem, availability. But then also too, there's a lot of social pressure that it's okay. It's just okay to eat this way. It's okay to live this way, right? But you go, as I'm certain, Kyle, you can attest, you go anywhere outside of like the quote unquote West, and people are like, they're not necessarily healthier in the sense that they might have poor access to, or less access to other things, but man, they're not as fat as we are. Like, that's just a fact. It's just a fact. Like, they're just not as fat as we are. And I do think that's indicative of something. And it doesn't,
well, and it's because our
you travel, you just notice this. You just notice this. And anyone who says
our culture
is lying. Like,
no, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, you could go, so for instance, it's not just industrialization that causes this. I mean, it's definitely a factor.
It's like the fucking high fructose in everything, right? It's the fact they
yes. But this is the trick, is that Japan doesn't suffer from nearly that much obesity.
No,
I mean, China, you would expect to start upticking the obesity massively too. And I'm sure they have that they're
China's
than they used
definitely
to
got
be.
an obesity problem.
It does.
Now.
Yeah. Well, Kyle can
it does now.
Kyle can
Okay.
speak on firsthand to that. Yeah. So
I mean, it's not I don't know. It's not quite the U.S. level, which is very high, but rates of overweight and then rates of obesity have definitely gone.
They're getting there. They're catching up. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, this is a channel for where we can have hot takes, and I would say the whole fat pride movement. And by that, I don't, if you're struggling with your weight, I feel for you. So am I. And I'm not like against you. But this idea that it's quote okay to be this way, when it's like, no, it's not medically okay and healthy to be this way, right? Like,
the whole notion that your options are pride or shame, and it's like, nah, dude, you could be ambivalent instead.
Right? Yeah, you could be ambivalent, or you could be like, well, it sucks that I am this way. Maybe I'm less of this way, and maybe I'll never be skinny, right? I'm not looking for some sort of weird, stupid, ridiculous other end of the spectrum, but like, at least in America, we have such an unhealthy relationship with our food, but then our food itself is so unhealthy. So it's a double whammy. So that was the first thing that came to my mind with Nurgle, is like, oh, food in our relationship to it, at least in America. I don't know. But that was the first thing that came to mind. Other areas where Nurgle might show up, other ideas.
People don't leash their dogs.
Okay.
Sorry, I got bit by a dog this week, so I'm kind of feeling it. I'm okay.
No.
I'm fine. It's more my pants that took the hit, but it's like, this thing's got like shit in its mouth. Like, I don't know what is happening. Like, they're Nurglings, basically.
Did you go to the doctor? I thought you went to the doctor for that.
No, I just called them and I was like, this happened. Like, do you feel like I need to come in? They're like, you're fine. So like, it was, as far as like getting bit by a dog goes, it's like totally fine. Good. But if we're thinking of like Nurgle, these are like little Nurglings, right? They're
Nurglings.
Like, they are full of possible diseases and
irresponsible dog owners.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm being
Monsanto.
very literal here because I've had
You're the very little one, very yeah. I like it though because you're bringing us back down to earth because we're like
Well,
yeah.
there's not a lot of metaphysical available in Nurgle, to be fair. Like he is a very literal,
Although
visceral.
death,
Like,
man, how is death not metaphysical? It's physical and metaphysical, both, man. Decay is
oh well.
both. Sorry, you're talking to the Kierkegaardian here. Okay. Yeah.
Oh.
And then I think Slanesh is pretty. I mean, was it Pornhub? Maybe a little bit of Slaneshness going on. Some of there, some at least certain spheres of maybe some spheres of Pornhub more than others. Are just like
Well, but also
OnlyFans,
teenage people that are cutting themselves, right?
yeah.
That's also kind
Yeah.
of Slaneshi.
And
Yeah, it's both. It's not just the pleasure; it's also the pain thing. I guess extreme BDSM clubs probably would have some Slanesh vibe going through there. I avoid those places. And
well, what about just like the idea that like you have to suffer a little bit in order to like advance in your career or to like I don't know,
maybe this is a good important question. Does
like the whole no
does
pain no gain
suffering
thing, which has really become.
does the presence of suffering bring about Slanesh? Is Slanesh about suffering?
No, so that definitely I don't think it's Slanesh. It's more like fetishizing no pain no gain in turning it into like there has to be pain in order for there to be gain.
Maybe.
That's what I'm wondering. Because like, okay, just think of like, okay, maybe it's just because I'm in grad school,
No, we
right?
have disagreements,
but like where people are like, you know, like it has to be hard. It has to be hard at every corner, and it has to be overwhelmingly challenging in order for you to like make progress.
I guess it's a kind of a limited experience. I think that more just as like a fact of life, but maybe this shows you just a difference of opinion.
Okay.
I guess that could be. I mean, yeah, you could over fetishize anything, right? Like you could blow out anything out of whack and make it hyper fetishized, and people do. Yeah, maybe yeah. Suffering for suffering's sake, something like that, as opposed to suffering. Yeah.
Right. That's kind of what I'm trying.
Yeah, no, that I can buy, and we workaholic culture.
Right.
Well, that'd be interesting. So that might mean that oh gosh, what were they called? The dudes who like whipped themselves in the Middle Ages?
Oh, flagellants.
Yeah, the flagellants. That's kind of interesting.
Flagellants. Yeah, that's a Slaneshi kind of thing to do for sure.
So in Chinese tech industries, there's this culture called 996. And the idea is that like you work basically like 6 days a week and you're putting in like ridiculous hours. And like this is just the lifestyle that is expected of you, and that's actually good. It's not just the standard. It's like it shows your commitment to the company. And it's 996, which off the top of my head. So you're working six days a week.
From 9 to 9.
I can't remember what you from 9 to 9.
12 hours, yeah. No, that feels Slaneshi.
That feels like Slaneshi to me.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, large factories where people are just like pumping out as much shit as possible, and for people having to just stitch stuff over and over again. That feels Slaneshi. Yeah. Global capitalism, I don't know, maybe kind of, maybe sort of. We're maybe extrapolating Slanesh beyond what is maybe more provable, but yeah.
Well, yeah, because I don't know that every action necessarily feeds a chaos god. Although, you know, if I had to put global capitalism in one of them, Slanesh probably would be. Yeah.
Well, and too, right? As Nick, as Land would say, right? So it's an AI. Sort of. So maybe Slanesh is someone. Maybe all these chaos gods have an AI quality to them. I mean, were we to put not necessarily in the 40K world, but right, to find our universe
for us
analog, maybe AI, they have an AI quality to where they kind of they're self-running, sort of. They feedback.
That's just like, I think all egregores are AIs, right? Like ultimately they function as a sort of AI that lives across multiple brains is maybe a way to put it. Yeah.
Language is kind of like this too. Like language in general is kind of AI in this sense.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, when I think of Slanesh, I think of like just, I don't know. I'm gonna say it, Madonna's face. It just wow.
Ah.
It just there was some pain. She went some weird fucking surgery shit and ends up looking like, tell me that's not Slanesh's work right there.
I mean, it's definitely partway through, although Slanesh is about perfection too. And actually that is another
Well,
fair
but
point.
what does perfection mean for Slanesh? It's probably not
Well,
your definition of perfection.
Well, it might not mean your definition of perfection, absolutely, right? But it also could mean your definition of perfection, but also that perfection might be a lot worse than you realize, right? Like there's much to be said about imperfection being pretty much good enough, you know?
Well, and there's much to be said about imperfections being part of beauty. True beauty is that it's not exactly perfect. Yeah.
Hey, Elliot, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't like one thing about Slanesh is like you seek out more pain or more pleasure, and like you always have to take it up a notch. Like you seek this next horizon, and that horizon you think is going to be it, right? And then you get to that horizon and it's not enough, so you got to take it to the next level. Is that I feel like I'm recalling that that's part of Slanesh, or maybe it's just the Drukhari. I don't know. Do you remember anything like that?
No, that's absolutely, like if you are gonna try to curry favor with Slanesh, that's absolutely what you're gonna need to do is, continue to ratchet the amount of pleasure or pain or one of those sorts of things, either going through you or someone else, right? Or mixing them two together and trying to figure out how to experience them as as widely as possible. So kind of codependent, sort of abuser, that sort of thing. That could be Slaneshi as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah, right. Like because you're what I call the pick a fight makeup cycle, right? You pick a fight with somebody to cause a conflict that then gets resolved, and then since you felt bad, now the feeling good feels even better now that you've made up because you started from a more negative place. I think that's a total cycle that Slanesh would approve of.
Yeah. Severely flawed relationships. Yeah. Abusive family structures. Slanesh.
God of abusive family structures. Not one that we thought we needed, but one that we got.
Yeah. No, the one we fucking created, right? Exactly. Yeah. The one we didn't want, but we just made, well, rather than fucking Eldari made, so thanks. Jeez. Can't have this.
The Eldari, aka the Americans.
Yeah, aka the Americans. Yeah, for real.
I mean, freaking who invented waterboarding? Like, Jesus, fuck. That's also Slanesh. Like,
yeah, no lies detected. Yeah. No, yeah, it's interesting. Like again, like I said, in a universe where everything, again, this is just sort of my noob take, but I think it holds. In a universe where everything is so bad, of course the true bad is going to be like just the worst. So, true to form, 40K, love you. It's just it's so not subtle, and I just kind of love you how much it hits you over the head. I don't know, any other takes, thoughts, opinions? Chaos gods in general?
Sometimes, even though the Chaos gods are generally playing against each other, occasionally they will unite in something that's currently called Chaos Undivided, I believe. That's within the 40K universe, there's sort of two reasons for everything, right? There's a lore reason, and then there's a buy tiny bits of plastic reason, right? And the whole Chaos Undivided is to allow Chaos players to actually have functioning armies, right? So that they can ally with each other. But regardless, there are times when the Chaos gods team up against others, and they have like interpersonal politics amongst each other too. Tzeentch and Khorne do not get along at all. Nurgle and Tzeentch don't get along. Slanesh kind of doesn't care about any of the other ones. Stuff like that. They all have their interpersonal, so to speak, politics.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think when I was thinking about like sort of essentially, I guess what we're trying to do here, at least I think we're all doing it. The way I was thinking of is, we're creating a demonology for 40K essentially, right? Like viewing. I know that technically, yes, the demons are the projections of the chaos gods, but like in the academic sense, right, in the theological academic sense of what a demonology is, I'll put my medievalist hat back on. Oh, okay, like these chaos gods are essentially the demons of this universe. It's interesting in that in some ways they're 4 individuated entities, whatever you want to call them. But if you look at, or at least when I've been thinking about how do they appear in our world, I think it's usually a mixture of several of them. Right? It's not just like, some things maybe are just Slaanesh, or some things are maybe are just Khorne, maybe just Nurgle. But oftentimes there's this element of like change that leads to, corruption, that leads to degeneracy, that leads to violence, that leads to change, that leads to, right. So there's a cyclical nature. And I think if you look at sort of IRL chaos gods, if you will, air quotes, yeah. As sort of, if you look at these dudes or whatever Slaanesh really is, as indicative of things that like wreak havoc amongst humans for us, usually it's hard to separate them out completely, right? Like there's elements of each of them kind of in all of life's problems. So maybe we are living in a chaos undivided world, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Maybe.
Well,
That's
what kind?
That's terrifying.
That's terrifying. Yeah, it's just maybe we're living in a chaos undivided world. That's what I'm thinking. So,
and there's a sense in which like it's not, well, I think we said this earlier, but it's not clear that the chaos gods are properly evil in the sense that like they got a little bit of blue orange morality, right? Like it's like, at what time horizon is what they're doing good or evil, right? Because we all agree that change from bad things is great, like that's what we want, and pleasure over suffering is pretty good sometimes, right? Yes, and sometimes long suffering is required, right?
It depends. You're being a hermeticist here, and I'll be a Christian.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It depends, right? It depends on the scenario, right? So
yeah, I guess. Yeah. No, but I see
heaven. Yeah, no, heaven is a Slaaneshi place. Slaanesh is all about heaven.
Well, from what I've gathered about learning about Slaanesh, I don't think that's what the Christian heaven is at all. But Slaanesh seems a lot like. Slaanesh seems a lot like a Event Horizon, right? When they go through
right.
War, right? So I think that's what Slaanesh is. That seems like hell to me, but I don't know. I mean, maybe it's an OnlyFans heaven, or I don't know, some sort of, that's what
exactly right.
Sort of weird, fucked up anti-heaven. Yeah, but no, like no, I think it's a fascinating demonology. Again, it's fascinating in that just it's, again, at least from my experience, somewhat unique in that they the mortals project the projections, essentially personified projections, but also that how easy it was, I guess, for me to find real world correspondences to this. Like, that's clearly Nurgle. This is clearly, like I'll drive by this whole week, drive by McDonald's. Nurgle, it's there. We must destroy it. Of course, then if you destroy it, then you're feeding Khorne. So what do you do? I don't know.
What do you do? Indeed. Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no redeemer in. Well, and this is actually what I think is really helpful for many religious people, right? And in particular, like a Christian person, right? It's really interesting to consider of like, hey, this is what a universe looks like without redemption at all, right? Like, this is what, like, because there's this really stupid philosophical question I super hate, which is, why does God allow evil to exist? And I'm like, well, here is what a universe without good looks like, right? So I mean, pick your poison, right? Like,
yeah, no, I was thinking about this earlier today, and it's like I was thinking that the closest thing, and again, closest is like with a big pound of salt, closest thing to some sort of good, and I'm going to put good in air quotes, right, is like the Emperor, but he's just as bad. And so, and the closest thing to, at least from a human perspective in the universe, the closest thing to order, not to goodness, but to order, which are not the same thing, is the Emperor, which is completely degenerate and awful and horrific and also super chaotic. So it's like there is no right, pun intended, option. There is no true good and beautiful option at all. Like, and the closest approximation to it is, my background, a completely degenerate, a human sacrificing empire. So that's your options. I don't know. I guess as we've been talking about, at least you and me, Elliot, in a world where everyone's awful, I guess just be the humans. That's my argument for why. I don't want to say yay Imperium.
Fancy the humanist, the wandering humanist wants to be human.
Yeah.
Didn't we say last time that it seems like the orcs are the ones who are having the best time?
They're having the best time. Yeah. But having a good time is not. Yes. And as I said, I'll reiterate from before, I never said the humans or the Imperium is good. I just said they're awesome. There's a difference. So,
well, yeah, I mean, and obviously I'm still fingers crossed, hoping like every good every good end cap, it's like, oh yeah, I'll be at the top of the Necron hierarchy, of course. I won't be just some drone.
Yeah, right. You keep telling yourself that, right? Yeah. Cool. We could start wrapping it up a bit, I guess. Any final thoughts, final musings? I don't know. Don't want to cut people off too soon, but I also know it's getting a little bit late for some of us. So I don't know. I think it's actually, it's the Chaos Gods provide an interesting sort of framework to view our world. In some ways, I think they almost work better in describing our world than the world of 40K. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Thanks for coming on. Any updates, things that you've done? I know, Elliot, I don't know if you want to rep the thing, but you just did a thing.
Oh yeah, I actually I did my own podcast episode.
A link to it in the description.
Yep, a link in the description for the whatever I'm calling myself. Oh goodness, it's the pawnbroker of ideas. Yeah.
Pawnbroker of ideas.
Which is a terrible name because I recently decided that ideas are fake. But I mean, maybe that's why I'm a good pawnbroker of them. So
let's tease that. Kind of gets to tease just a little bit. What do you talk about in this first episode of your podcast, so people will want to listen to it, which they should.
Yeah. So a friend of mine asked me to listen to the Lord of Spirits podcast, which is two Orthodox priests talking about spiritual matters, right? And I listened to some of the episode, and I get kind of grumpy when priests talk in certain ways. And recorded episode on kind of my thoughts responding to some of the ways that they approach things. Even like from I kind of use my own hermetic perspective, but also like I come at it from a Christian perspective too. Of like,
oh no, Elliot, you there?
It's quite a bit of fun.
Yeah. Oh, you're cutting a little bit in and out, but yeah. So you're just sort of responding to. It sounds like in the episode you just respond to sort of an orthodox take on, like, is it proofs for supernatural existence or something like that?
No, it's not necessarily proofs of supernatural existence. It's just they're talking about it's the intro podcast, so it's the first one in their series that they started up, and basically the part that I was responding to was their attitude towards immaterial and material existence, right? Okay. Like I think that people are so there we go.
Yeah.
So cool. You can the term was spawned was scientific immaterialism. So there you go.
And then this is your thing too, right? That ideas aren't real or something like that. Is this where this comes from?
Well, yeah, I mean it's related to ideas or fake. Anyway, well,
we will doubtless tackle that in a future episode because I have some things to say about that. But I'll do my best to hold my tongue. Kyle, I know you're busy doing probably far more noble and
still plugging away at my
things.
I got nothing to plug. Sorry.
Yeah, that is fine. Be on the lookout for his dissertation, folks. It's gonna be a banger. We'll be, I would love to have you all back on for more 40K. I think that's sort of the plan. Every few weeks or so do more 40K. So everyone, thank you for liking and commenting and subscribing and for watching. Again, episodes for the episode god, I guess. We'll do the things that the people want to hear, I guess, to a certain extent, although we won't be driven too strongly by the mob on this channel. But 40K is fun and people seem to like it, so we'll do some more. Yeah, and with that, I wish everyone a great weekend, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace, everyone.